Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded February 9th, 2022. Franklin, what's up, brother?
Edward, what's up with you?
Learning. Had a great presentation by one of the product group guys for MDE about the new TVM stuff. That's private preview, getting ready to go public. It's actually pretty cool. One of the things I'm most proud of, I had this stuff running already. So I was putting the network scanner in, device discovery and stuff. It's actually pretty cool. They're also explain the Log4j dashboard inside the unified portal, which is pretty cool, and how that would be populated. I don't think it'll ever include every CVE. You probably got to be a 10 to get on it, right? It's just not going to be there. Help the customer put some parsers in. They put all these analytic rules in, but the customers don't necessarily read the fine print that says, yo, this is not going to work unless you go in and deploy these parsers inside of it. So ASIM. So I'm learning a lot. Rand and I did it together in our environment. I was battling an app registration issue trying to get 365 audit logs and DLP logs in. I can't get it to work. I threw my hands up. The DLP connector will be out next week or so, right? Yeah, I don't have time for that, right? I'm like, golly, this PowerShell command won't work. And so it stumped a couple of people, and I left it alone. I got other fish to fry. They may not be bigger, but I'm gonna fry some different fish. The MDE scanner doesn't, I found a bug. I'm going to reach out to Yossi over on the MDE side and say, I think I found something. And I was able to duplicate it. Whereas when you try to deploy the software to make your workstation a scanner, it yells at you about permissions to be able to enable it and do service. But it doesn't allow you to right click on it and run as administrator, or it doesn't pop you an elevated, hey, do you want to install this elevated privileges? So it was dying. So and I was able to do it, and it wouldn't do it. So I need to figure that out. Help the customer write a HVAT, and did my first watch list. I did that. Who would have thunk it that I would give it into the dark side, messing with watch lists? So you guys know that watch lists are Franklin's favorite feature in Sentinel.
The most useless feature in Sentinel.
Oh
so I've been waiting all week for my Microsoft Security Insights podcast, 2 coffee mugs that I ordered, and they're still not here yet. So I'll have to call the Rod Trent support line and find out what the deal is.
Customer satisfaction and procurement and fulfillment, man. It's not Rod strong points. I don't know what to tell you. Not like me. When you guys ask me for something, you get boxes of stuff. Franklin, did you get your VPN router and everything?
Yep, I got it.
I sent Rod Trent a box of firewalls, Joe and Trevor. Fortinet, switches. He wanted an ASA, whatever he wanted. I said, dude, I got plenty of firewalls. You need one, let me know. I used to work at a bar. So you name it. I got a Palo Alto sitting over here. And then I said, hey, Rod, where's the firewall I gave you? Oh, it's right here under my foot.
No, I have to look this way this time. It's over here now. I did move
you just moving it as furniture.
I did move it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Other than that, man, some good learning. Had a little bit of personal stuff today. Ended up sounding worse than it was. Son, car. He's all right though. And what else I've been working on? Can't talk about that. Can't talk about that either.
Story of my life. I can't talk about it.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's personal indie.
Yeah, if you have customers that have a client-side VPN client, according to how it's configured the integration, it will cause false positives for Log4j shell exploitate.
We went across that last week, right?
We covered that last week, and I was able to duplicate it. I actually did it without a VPN client, even though I was going to use Meraki to try to do it. All you have to do is be able to force traffic out of 2 different interfaces on your machine and watch what happens. It's like someone's trying to create a backdoor, a C2. So,
all right, so I got a question for you. Mm-hmm. We have to get to Rod because he's going to have to leave soon. Mm-hmm. How important do you think it is for people for the SC-200 exam to cover ASIM?
Do I have a scale, or do you just want me to give you an arbitrary not or is?
It should or should not?
I'm going to go with should not. I'll tell you why.
Really?
Yeah. Because I think that's an advance, something that you assume that these people need these parsers without actually knowing what data connectors that they're going to bring in and analytic rules.
Well, the idea is that parsers, data correlation should be a black box. We should just be able to correlate everything.
I
Right?
agree with that.
That's where ASIM comes in, hopefully one of these days.
Yeah, but it should just be built in rather than you have to go to the Git and then download or press deploy to Azure, which I found out doesn't work. If you do it from top to bottom, you have to go from bottom to top because there's some dependencies that are not advertised. If you do it in a different order, it works. And if you deploy all, I came back and some of the analytic rules work because when you look at the rule logic, you can see if it has a red dot. And I go look at it like, I'm missing a parser. Then I go back in and I did it. So that's what Ren and I was figuring out with the customer, which it's an interesting thing. Someone asked me about Zoom. I'm like, don't use that connector. It's useless. I mean, it only does really two security things. Ransomware traffic that's being tried to transmit it over the product, or you got uninvited people trying to Zoom on you. Other than that, you just bring in a bunch of noise with Zoom. It is noisy. And you need a Zoom account. So I was going to set it up in our Frank and use our Zoom account. You can't just do it with a regular account. It has to be a paid account because you got to grab the API, sort of like Box, Dropbox, and all that other stuff, Salesforce. So you can get a developer. That's what I did with Box because I don't use Box. I got a developer license, so I can use the API to call.
Doesn't MCAS take care of all this for you?
It does for those who are brave enough to use MCAS or Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, which is my favorite product in the world. So
all right, so Rod, your vote is for ASIM in SC-200.
It is, at least, yeah, you need to know about it. I would say that you need to know about it and at least that it is a deployable solution, at least currently. So how it takes on from a learn perspective after that, I don't know, because it gives them customers familiarity with our GitHub repo and stuff like that. So anyway.
And we have a question in the chat for you. How's Rod's new team going?
I've had that asked several times already. You would think I would have a uniform answer by now and have it written down somewhere. Just read it off. I should get with marketing or maybe our lawyer org, our law org or something. I don't know. I'm just kidding. It's going good. It's going good. I joined a larger team, which means I have more opportunity to spread the.
You were the only one before on the team, so anything's larger, right?
I was the only one on my team for about 2 months, and then got a manager, and he left for Google, and I got a colleague who's from Nairobi. So because of the time differences, we rarely talked. So yeah, it was just kind of me. But now we're part of a much larger team, and like I said, it gives a lot better opportunity to spread the Sentinel love. So I'm actually looking forward to it. I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
There. Except for I've spent the past 2 days in training. There's an absolute black and white difference between training in the services and training at the court in this role. Now it's just kind of foundational role process type stuff and nothing technical at all. I was telling Frank earlier, one of the sessions today actually triggered a bunch of folks and they had to apologize. And it was kind of interesting. So,
yeah, I'm doing some training that I agree with, but I begrudgingly had to do it because it's part of my role priorities.
Yeah.
Got 75, 80% through this selling the key executives and they blew it all away. So I'm contacting the training people and mock because they went from being 75% to 0.02 complete. I'm like, how do you even get 0.20 complete? Did I look at the webpage?
Only you, Edward. Only you.
I know. So
let me get this straight, Rod. You guys get technical training?
you
Need to find any in our area.
Well, I've had technical training before. Yeah, but no, not anymore. So
I did.
He does the technical training.
He does the technical training. Franklin, did you get that site-to-site VPN or policy-based VPN set up yet?
Not yet. I will do that when I'm writing questions for AZ-700 so I can validate my questions.
I'm gonna sit
So-
and write the AZ-700, and when I finish the SC-300, I thought
Still
I
got
crushed
the Brody.
Brody to atoms. These basic molecules.
you just pass
here,
it while
he's-
he's gone.
He's not here tonight because he's studying.
He needs to be studying. He wrote a check out his ass, and I'm gonna cash it.
So
There we go.
Just clean it first.
Who wrote SC-900? Frank, did you handle that one too?
Did not write SC-900. I wrote. I was on the JTA for SC-900, but I do write questions for SC-900 later in its life cycle.
We're actually getting the author SC-900 coming on, right, Rob?
We will. Yeah, absolutely. 300 and 900. He's writing both of those.
Well, he's writing books. He didn't write the mock for it.
Right.
Yeah. Aaron is the author of the MS-900. He pushed because they had that big snowstorm up in Massachusetts, so he had no power, no lights, no nothing. So he was, he's like, hey man, I got to push. So we're gonna adjust it a little bit. Those guys at Red Canary keep beating on my head. They want to bring their Atomic Red team on, right? So evidently they're getting good press from the podcast. So they hit me up, say, hey, you guys can forget about it. It's gonna allow us to come back on. Like, sure, we'll get you guys back on. I want to hear. I like the product.
No. I think it's key. Like I said, I've written labs around their work, so I think it's good.
Yeah,
so we
I
have
like
guests tonight.
We do
Who's
have
our guests.
Wow.
So we have two guests that are Microsoft studs, superstars, gurus. What happens when you bump your head and all of a sudden you become super smart? A savant. Is that what they call them now? All of a sudden you can do all this crazy stuff.
Savants.
Savants. There you go. So Trevor and Joe are CSAs and or just architects and or security practitioners. I work with Trevor. We double team a bunch of accounts. He's solid. And I recently met Joe by virtue of Trevor. And when I saw an announcement on LinkedIn, I liked it. I said, oh my God, the guy's got a book out. It's pretty cool. So I reached out and said, hey, would you like to come on and talk about this? Because this would have very cool dovetail into Franklin with his experience and how the SC-200, both from the Microsoft Learn perspective and the actual exam came to be. And this sort of brings it all back together because we had someone on the podcast that was sort of entry inside the MS Learn, how it's put together. Franklin handled some of the JTA, and now we finally can round it out with someone who actually published a study material, a guide, right? And so Trevor introduced me to Joe, co-author, said, hey, get on and just share your experiences for everything from creating a book, why you thought it was necessary, what you think is cool, and whatever you want to talk about. My introduction won't do justice to them. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves and hand the floor over and talk about whatever they want to talk about. Right. But we really want to just, it's about SC-200 today. And I'd like to hear their perspective, what they like, what they don't like about the actual learn, the exam. I heard it's being updated. Is that true? Or is that not public knowledge?
It's always being updated.
Yeah. Wasn't it updated in January? Or am I wrong there? I thought it was updated in January. Maybe not.
They did this silly thing by renaming all the products, so there definitely has to be them. I was in a meeting today and told everybody that Microsoft was renaming Azure AD to Microsoft AD. Didn't go over too well.
We need more Defender products.
Well, that makes sense though. I mean, they're trying to do Kerberos like authentication in AAD and as well as GPO type stuff. So Microsoft AD is ubiquitous, and it's just AD. Irregardless if you're up here or you're down here, it's AD.
And I did bring to the table them renumbering all of the exams based upon Edward's recommendations. So
you're right, because I thought the exam numbering they probably laughed you out of the room, right? Like, you messing with that Yahoo? He can't find his butt with both hands. So, hey, without further ado, the SC-200, Franklin encouraged me to take it. I signed up for it. They canceled it. I got there. They reassigned me. I took the exam. Didn't pass the exam. Put me down as no-show. because I was late. And I was late to the exam because you had me sit in the waiting room for 15 minutes. That's how I was late. You didn't come out and get me. So when I put a ticket in, per Frank's request, play it forward and help everybody else out, they erased my entire MCP history all the way back to 1998.
Oof.
That cost
Hey,
me
how long did
500. That cost me $500 for them to do that.
I was not.
Should have been a tip in a chapter in the book.
And it was a whole fiasco. All the emails and stuff I shared with everybody. I'm like, oh my God, I can't win. Like, you didn't show up. Like, you canceled my thing. That's why I didn't show up. So anyway, Trevor and or Joe, we'll go with Joe first for introduction. J comes before
Sure.
T. So Joe, tell everybody what's to know.
Yeah, so thank you for having me on. This is an awesome experience. My first podcast, and a great group of individuals to start that out with. But so yeah, at Microsoft, I'm actually a CE, not a CSA. I'm not as fancy as you guys. I'm in a new little niche team that was created last year in GCC, the global, or GTT, sorry, Global Technology Team, called the Cyber Incident Responders. So I'm in a group of 6 people trying to build that out to 10 or so of engineers that get attached to DART. So when DART has an engagement, we get brought in, and our primary responsibility is to handle Defender for Endpoint and Defender for Identity. Once we get that out of the way, we generally help with any of the forensics tools or any other areas that we can help out. Usually there's a lot of fires going on with the customer. We have various skill sets from previous areas or parts of our career where we can help out. I do a lot of SCCM work and Intune where I can. But otherwise, it's get the tooling out there and then aid the forensic investigation. And then usually I'll also follow that all the way to the outbrief. So we'll outbrief the customer, and as you would in a traditional DART engagement, let them know the forensics timeline, who, what, when, where, everything we've discovered, and then drop them a giant list of recommendations. And then being a CE and then building that relationship, we also have the ability to kind of stay behind when DART leaves. DART is very much in and out. Get into the investigation and bounce, and then we can stay behind as CEs and extend with premier contracts or whatever it may be to help them enhance their security posture. So it's kind of an end-to-end position to be in, but I enjoy it very much. So that's a little bit about me.
Very cool. Trevor.
Yeah, Joe really underestimates his actual power and his skill. This guy's an absolute legend, and I've known him for about 5-6 years now, Joe, maybe a little bit longer. I actually met Joe when I was a vendor PFE, and he worked for a Microsoft partner called Concurrency. And the relationship history is, it's in stone now. And so we're basically been in lockstep. So I'm previously a customer engineer as well. Did that for a few years at Microsoft. One of my most memorable events was being flown out to the United Kingdom for the FedEx TNT ransomware incident in 2017, where I was over there for 6 months straight, did not come home to get them out of a really bad spot where they had a terrible NotPetya ransomware attack that went from one computer to the rest in 3 minutes and 23 seconds and impacted 76,000 machines. And so that was really my entryway really into the world of cyber and the world of understanding, what it takes to protect a customer. So I focus a lot of my time on, hardening Active Directory, leveraging SCCM and group policy to implement security baselines and patching methodologies. But really my passion was all really in Azure. And so recently, about 6 months ago, took a new role here. So now I'm a cloud solution architect. Focused on really all things Azure security and identity. And that also includes Microsoft 365 Defender as well. Joe and I used to be on that same team. The incident response team that he's referring to is a new org, is a new, almost like a team underneath an umbrella within an org, if that makes sense. And it's super tactical. But I mean, the experience you get in our tooling that is prominently, being referred to in the SC-200 is huge. You can take somebody who hasn't had a single step of experience in these tools, put them on an IR for about a week and a half, and they got 6 months of experience in that week and a half. And so it's great. And then once upon a time, you rewind, I don't know, what, about a year ago now? It seems like, Joe, we got randomly reached out to by a buddy of mine named Amit Singh. He's a consultant. He was a consultant at the time with an MCS. He moved on over to the dark side and became a customer engineer as well. But somebody reached out to him about authoring a book, and he's like, I haven't even touched the SC-200 stuff. Trevor, you want to do it? I said, sure. Let me look into that. And I said, hold on. I don't want to do this alone. Let me bring my boy Joe. and here we are. So it's been a journey. It's been a journey of how we met, how our time together has overlapped both as vendors and partners, as well as full-time employees, and then teammates and co-authors.
Every new idea Trevor has starts with a message to me. Hey, bro. I'm like, yes, whatever it is, probably yes. Let's do it.
I'll wait for you to say no one day, man.
So
got to be out there.
with the creation of the book, what was the prep? What did you do to get an understanding to, I won't say validate what you knew, but to say, if I'm writing this, do I need to prove my ability to convey my expertise in this book via pass an exam? Did you prep yourself for it, or did you just write the book?
A little bit of both for me. It was an interesting moment when we were asked, because I think the exam rough book that Microsoft does had just come out or was just about to come out. And so rather than just trying to write a repeat book, we tried to somewhat take the approach of, we want to fill this book that has the right topics in areas where they can take enough from it to pass the exam, but also come away with some tangible operational skills and things that apply more to their day-to-day actions if they were to administer things or more perform from a SOC analyst position, if they were confined to the Microsoft stack. Obviously, we're not going into all things SOC, but we tried to find a somewhat of a different approach into getting to pass the exam, so it's not just a mirror image of the rough book that was already out. So that was the path we took. But yeah, to answer your question a little bit more closely, it was a mixture of both for me. Obviously, I with my job, I'm pretty strong with MDE and MDI. I do some MCAS, and then Trevor, coincidentally just had a lot of the other skills. So, we just picked the chapters that we were best at and went our way.
Yeah, MDI is one of my favorite tools. Behind MCAS and MDE, but that's not true. We definitely want to ditch you back on to talk MDI, especially with some of the improvements I heard that were coming. And some of the stuff, so
actually just met with, I can't say much about it, but met with the team to talk about, some of the things that are coming down the line, or things that we want to come down the line, feedback from customers and feedback from people in the field and IR, what would be good things that we want to track. So it's one of my favorite products.
So let me say this. So it's interesting, when you write for Learn, you have to follow a specific format, which limits the depth that you can go into on topics. So one of the main reasons to buy a book like this is you're going to be able to get the depth that you're not structurally able to get with inside Learn content. Yeah. And I think that other training providers who will remain nameless, who I really expected to come out with the deeper level of understanding of response for cloud-based products, failed to do that because they tried to go cross-platform, not vendor-specific. So, if your book provides that deeper level of understanding and is vendor-specific, I think it's a winning situation for our audience here to pick up the book.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and just as Joe was saying before, making sure that it applies to real life, right? So we spent a lot of time on emphasizing, overall deployment of the tools, because hey, you're going to need to know that, right? And some of the gotchas that, Joe and I have experienced in the field, we're expected to expeditiously deploy our tools to hundreds of thousands of endpoints, in a week, or, dozens of forests from an MDI perspective, and then what limitations have existed and how to work around those limitations. And then, really just make use of the tool, and, covering what's in the dashboards. Like when you're going through the Microsoft 365 Defender portal, what are you looking at? And why would you spend your time in each of these nodes. And so while there's still topics in there that are definitely specific to help you, pass that exam, the ultimate goal to differentiate it, like Joe was saying, is really to make it so that, hey, I feel equipped to actually go do this role in some capacity in my enterprise, or go interview for a place who needs one. And so, yeah.
There are parts that almost read like tutorials. If you're trying to learn a long format task, there are parts of the book that will hit on that pretty hard. We did have a page count quota. So, it was like trying to find a balance of, we have to make sure we get the stuff for the exam in there, but we want to provide it in a different light. It was a fine balance the whole time while we were writing, not to mention, new things coming out, rebrands in the middle of writing or towards the tail end of writing I'm like, just get the book out.
Mm-hmm. So to pivot on that question, forgive me for not knowing, I haven't purchased the book yet. I'm definitely going to get it just because you guys, and just figure out how I can get you guys to sign it or something and put it on my shelf.
There you go.
What was the hardest chapter to write and the easiest chapter to write?
Oh, you go, Joe, first.
Yeah, easiest for me was MDI or any of the MDE stuff. Hardest was probably some of the hunting stuff, because a lot of my experience was more administrative than it was SOC operational. So instead of like the advanced hunting and the custom blanking on the terminology, go figure. Just some of the more SOC operational things were a little bit different for me, coming from like what Dart does to then going back into just our stack, our Microsoft security stack instead of our proprietary tools, was a little bit of a learning curve, but got the job done.
Okay, all right. Trev?
I would say the easiest for me would be the ones that were formerly Azure Security Center. So we had 2 different chapters allocated for that. Well, it was 2 parts because it ended up being over 50 pages of content just for Defender for Cloud. And because we really wanted to nail home, difference between CSPM and CWPP, what it means from, at a high level, the pricing perspective, but ultimately, what's it mean for you day to day? Like, how are you going to get value out of the recommendations? How are you going to get value out of the workload protections? And then how do you tie that into an overall single process that will represent, a SOC process, right? So that was easy. And partially because the majority of my conversations during authoring that particular chapters with customers was all about that, right? It was operationalizing Defender for Cloud, right? And getting under the hood, not just what you see on our doc site, not just what you see from like a seller from telling you all the goodness in it, but really, what's this mean for you? Like, what do you need to know to really know what it's doing under the hood? So I loved that chapter. And then I'd say some of the more difficult ones were ones that had nothing to do with the product or any of the products within the exam, just required ones from the publishing company. Sometimes Joe and I are looking at something like, wait, what? Like, what value does this add? Whatever, we got to do it. And so kind of getting inside of, the technical and the depth to something completely random, but it's part of the authoring process. That was some of the most difficult parts there. Because, you don't understand until you do it, like what all goes into a book, from submission to draft submissions to now you're still, concurrently working on chapters and moving forward in the book. You wait 3 months and then you get review from your first few chapters. You're like, hold on. I'm trying to move forward. You're taking me backward on one person. This is a packed publisher. I can't do it on the clock because that was another restriction, because being Microsoft employees, Microsoft publishing is no longer really a thing. And so this is, in order to maintain CELA compliant, we had to do this off the clock. So we still had our full-time day jobs, and with Joe being on, global incident response, sometimes working Japanese hours. That was difficult. So it was an experience.
Having a newborn, going through a SANS course at the same time.
What SANS course?
I took the GSED, the Global Enterprise Defender. The GSED. I think it's 450. No, what is it? I don't remember what number it was, but it's the GX Certified Enterprise Defender, according to the plaque. I don't remember what the number was.
I got to go back and revisit that. I got close, but didn't get it on the 555. The data analytics and SIM analyst. So I give it another shot. I got to knock out something else first. So very cool.
Yeah, the course, I'm sorry, the cert you get when you take that is that, but it was the Advanced Security Essentials. I think 4508 is the GCFA, the Forensics Analyst. I was going to take that one, but wanted to be a little bit more humble and take a more appropriate start to some of the SANS exams. So I started there. It's a fantastic experience.
That's an interesting way to approach it, because Franklin is a fan of the 508, in which I am going to get. And I get it. I had a situation where I needed Frank's assistance, because one of my strong points is I quickly realize when I'm in over my head. Right? And like, hey, I need some help, because this is not what I think I'm seeing. But we end up figuring it out. So 508 is definitely on mine, but I need to get the other one that I didn't quite right. I got close, but I didn't. So with the 200, the book is fairly new. Feedback will come as purchases and reviews and stuff come.
It's not even out yet, is it?
No, it just came out. What's it called? Pre-order 2 weeks ago. Last week, Monday. Yeah. May I think is what they're targeting.
Oh, May,
I think late April, early May. Yeah.
You have a table of contents anywhere?
Yeah, I think we can acquire that.
We can find a draft, yeah.
I know we have the pre-finals, so there should be a table of contents in there. I don't think it was just the chapters, but yeah.
Do you? And you mentioned this in the very beginning, one of you guys, about getting you prepared to write the exam, sit the exam, take the exam. Do you get them close? Is there a confidence in your book that prepares individuals to say, hey, you may not take the exam right after my book, but it gives you a foundation if you want to supplement it with other learning. But if I just took your book, read through it, got me a lab up, and did everything, should I have confidence sitting in the exam?
Anybody can pass it. Brody passed it, so anyone can. What are you talking about?
I know, right?
I would have a high level of confidence that you would have a strong gut feeling on most questions, for sure. I mean, of course, there's a level of accountability when it comes to taking an exam, right? We're not giving all the answers away. We're steering you down the path of these are the things. This is the level you need to know things. There's a level of accountability, like I said, for you to retain that information. We give guidance on, hey, you should read more about this thing. Here's a URL to go read more about this particular thing. Like, here's where you should go into depth. So there's a level of accountability there. But I would have a pretty good level of confidence for people with that. Of course, we can't guarantee anything. Not in the business of doing that, but yeah.
When somebody buys your book, do they get a free M365 E5 license to practice?
I was about to ask the same question.
Yeah, just eats out of the royalties. We see no money.
But do you guys provide guidance on a more serious question? I was about to ask that same question. Do you guys provide guidance on how to set up a lab, exercises, get an Azure Pass and stuff like that?
Yeah, we give a couple of different ways setting up, preparing for a lab environment. Yep.
Okay. Which I believe is super important. I'm visual.
Mm-hmm.
I talk a lot of theory, but I got to see it, and I'm like, okay, because I'm messing with the SC-200, and I've absolutely gone through some stuff. Like, I didn't know you can do that. Right?
Yeah. We talk about going from building your own lab, like from scratch, building your domain controllers, building whatever your endpoint management's going to be. How to go that route. We go through starting a subscription, and then using the simulations aspect of the Defender portal, where you can spin up VMs for set periods of time, and then also how to plan for using and leveraging those windows, because when you spin those up, you don't get a lot of time with them. You can get a lot of time with a few machines, or you can get a little bit of time with like 5. I forget what the metrics are. But we even give some guidance on, how to make the best use of your time if you're going to go and spin up that trial.
Very cool.
Right, so since Rod unfortunately left before I could ask this question, and this is my favorite question to ask when Rod is here. Do you even see a need for Sentinel if you have the M365 Defender portal?
I had that question today.
This is a loaded question. Go ahead.
Do I see the need for Sentinel if I have access to say the question again?
Do you see the need for a Sentinel if you just have the M365 Defender portal and you're focused on endpoints and what that provides? Do you see any benefit of Sentinel?
I would say so, although I'm not super well versed in Sentinel. That's not my area of expertise at all. But I feel like I'm looking at your face. I'm trying to vibe out if this is a trick question or not.
No, it isn't, because I had that question today, and I'm working with a seller, and I can't mention the customer name, but they are using Sentinel, and they say it's not a SIM, right?
Oof.
And so I had two of those questions today. Like, if I'm running Azure Defender and Microsoft Defender, I need the SIM. Now, I have an answer for that. I gave him an answer. I'm like, yes and no. But give me the reason yes. If you're looking for meaningful telemetry that can still make you in a better security posture and ability to respond to something that may be nefarious, there is a lot of value to using the E5 stack solo, combine it with Azure Defender, whether it be Azure Defender for cloud, apps, Kubernetes, IoT, whatever it may be. But the main thing that I told the customer, like, if you are saying that you are a Microsoft consumer technologies solely, especially from a security standpoint, which is rare, it's not impossible because I've seen it more in SMBs than I've seen it anywhere else. All Sentinel is a log aggregation for non-Microsoft technologies that you're bringing in. Okay. And the way we do it is either the name connectors and or syslog and Ceph. That's it. So there's a yes and no, but I can tell you I'm working in a unified portal. It's evolving. I don't know if you guys are seeing it. If you're not in a private preview, I'm like, when did that come in? Right. So
MDI, I think it's MDI now is in there this week.
Yep.
I'm saying, like, oh, this is so cool.
So one more thing that they did in Office now, I guess, internet-based macros will not fire off anymore. So I don't know if that breaks any of the labs that they have out there now. So I don't know if you saw that, where they basically cut off macro execution.
They should have done this a long time ago, right?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the holdup there was.
Yeah. So I gave my impression, Joe and Trevor, of whether you need Sentinel or not. I don't know. What's your experience? Because there is a situation, a scenario where you don't.
Yeah.
This customer says they're billing $8K a month in this product, and they just say, "Oh, we don't have a SIM."
Yeah.
Well, you're using Sentinel. Well, Sentinel's not a SIM.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the yes and no is probably the answer. It is customer specific. I would lean more towards this because of my preferences that you absolutely do. I mean, there's going to be different personas in every environment where, yeah, your main responsibility will keep you in the Defender 365 portal. Maybe if you're just like an endpoint admin or a server admin, right? But I mean, from the additional enrichment that you get, the telemetry you can get, automation that you can get, the data you can get from other sources outside of just what's in the E5 security stack, for overall overarching visibility that can include Microsoft and non-Microsoft, our cloud and cross-cloud and hybrid environments, you absolutely need Sentinel. And yes, it is a SIEM. And I would probably challenge the customer who said it wasn't and tell me then what's their definition of a SIEM and say, okay, you're describing Sentinel.
Why do I need Sentinel when I can use Microsoft Defender for Cloud and manage those other resources and get threats through Defender for SQL? So why do I need Sentinel at that point?
Yeah, so if for a customer who has the on-prem E5 stack plus Defender for Cloud enabled and actively operationalized, while I understand you do get a lot of the cloud-based, and if you deploy Arc for hybrid or cross-premise environments can be fed into Defender for Cloud, there's still visibility that you will not be able to get with Defender for Cloud that exists through different data connectors that Sentinel has available to it. And also from a hunting perspective, I just feel like hunting in Sentinel is way easier than going straight to hopping between Defender for Cloud and log analytics. Just keep me in a single node. I have ADHD, man. Like, I don't need to be flipping between one solution to another. Just keep me here. And there's just that would be my main thing, because you can connect security solutions to it, like WAF and a few other third party. But I mean, just the overall library of available connected solutions to Defender for Cloud is nothing really in comparison to what Sentinel has. And Sentinel's relatively new in the market, and it's just always evolving.
Got two more questions for you. The first one is, do I need to have MDE if I'm using Defender for servers? What's the deal with that?
That question this week.
I have
too.
it.
So I feel like the Defender for server thing is a relatively new term. Am I correct there?
It was probably Azure Defender for servers before, something like that.
Sure.
Or,
is that-
or
So
Azure,
you're
Security,
asking-
Azure Security Center.
Oh,
Okay, so Defender for Cloud for servers versus MDE, is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And it also does depend, right? So generally speaking, when I'm talking to a customer, it does come down to cost, right? And so if you have an Azure-based resource that you're going to keep running for less than 250 hours a month, it's more fiscally responsible for you to have Defender for Cloud on those from a monitoring perspective. But if you're doing it for 251 plus hours in a given month, then financially, because the functionality is very similar. You still have, it's EDR under the hood, right? Now I'll pause on that because I can get into a black hole, but generally speaking, from a financial perspective, my MDE for servers is going to be what I normally see more broadly deployed for a server estate. But I also want to make sure that, hey, it's not just EDR you're getting, right? So in addition to EDR, you are going to get some more of the advanced adaptive application and network controls. And then you'll have different flavors of options from a vulnerability assessment perspective, either the Microsoft built-in one or Qualys integrated, which comes with your license and what you're kind of paying there for Defender for Cloud on servers perspective there. And if a customer has a ton of Arc-enabled servers, I take that into consideration as well. But Arc and Purview and things like that are really great for amazingly large hybrid environments. It does add a little bit of complexity when it comes to making those decisions because, their money's going into quite a few pots at that point.
Yeah.
All right. My next question before Edward jumps in here is, do you recommend sysmon or do you think MDE is enough for event collection?
Oh man. Well,
He thought this. They thought this was going to be.
So I've only seen sysmon used in one customer environment during an IR engagement, and it didn't provide any value. I'm not saying from what I've read, I have not really used sysmon in an operational standpoint. Everything I read about it is it adds tremendous value. The context that I saw in this particular engagement, it seemed like it was set up on a portion of machines, what seemed like a test. Didn't dive too deep into that with the customer, but we didn't see any value from it. But I would say vaguely or broadly, because like I said, I'm not well versed in using it operationally. It seems to have tremendous value, and I would like to say that I definitely would recommend it, but it'd be hard to have a lot of weight behind it or a lot of reasoning behind it with what I know about it. Just being transparent.
It's come up in conversation when I'm having security monitoring architecture discussions with a customer. Don't care where it lives, right? And so when I look at it, security architecture from a monitoring perspective, I look at it two folds. You have your alerts, and then you have your feeds or your evidence and your breadcrumbs, right? And so I believe full-heartedly that MDE is going to do a really great job of giving me the alerts that I need to get my attention. It does give you evidence, it really does. But oftentimes people feel that the evidence trail is still not enough, right? And so I ask, depending on where it's going, who's responsible for, really analyzing the data from an ingestion standpoint? Is it going to Splunk? Is it going to Sentinel? Is it going to ArcSec, QRadar, Logarithm? I don't care where it goes. Do you have capacity restraints? Because if you have capacity restraints, I'm never going to say, hey, go deploy sysmon to the world, because it's going to be a very noisy, very highly ingested, and probably quite a costly solution for you. So it comes down to, what do you want, right? And what's enough? Like, what are your requirements? And if you're telling me, hey, I got to get everything under the sun, you're probably going to be deploying both sysmon for all of your feeds and your breadcrumbs, pipe that somewhere, right? And then MDE for your alerts. And then you can do ultimate, I guess, enrichment with, whatever you teach it to do, investigation, because you're going to have a trail inside of a trail inside of a trail. They can give you exactly what you need to make a disposition on that account, on that device.
Yeah, Sysmon, like I said, from what I've seen, would be something that would be used by more of a mature SOC. A lot of the customers that we've had to deal with, don't necessarily have a lot of things in the right position. So I wouldn't expect to see Sysmon in some of the situations that I'm a part of. But yeah, a lot of what Trevor said is gold.
My experience with it, and that was a loaded question, my friend. He's a huge Sysmon fan. But my thing is, who doesn't know about Mark's product? Big shout out to Mark. Come on to the show. It is, and I'm going to ask this question to Joe from Dart, and you don't have to put any of the secret sauce out about it, but I've gone into some stuff that Dart has left out. They've left the thing, and I've come in, I'm like, who did this? So when you guys are doing endpoint, the weirdest thing I had ever seen, a Dart engagement, can't mention the customer, and they got a big bill in log analytics because someone went and put the AMA agent, or at that time as an MMA agent, across 5,000 Windows 10 endpoints. And I asked the customer who did it. And they told me who did it. And I'm like, okay, why didn't you remove it when you were done? And they were like, oh, we saw value in it. So my question to you is, if you must do this to atypical endpoints that are Windows 10, is it, and you can call the agent whatever you want, OMS, MMA, AMA, AEIOU, do you still see this as something that is important as a leave behind? I know it may be good for incident response, but when you're done, should you take it out?
So that, from how the tooling works, currently or recently in the last year at least, we don't lay MMA down on Windows 10. So that example must have been either someone spoofed you or it was a long time ago. Because I actually work with the so just one quick bit of clarity. I am situationally a Dart member. I am still a CE at heart. Dart, they're consultants. They're their own organization. But knowing the tooling, we don't lay MMA down on Windows 10. That's only for down-level server primarily. Do I see a reason to remove it, even in the right context of where we would deploy it? Sure. I mean, the reason why we want it there anyways is to get the telemetry, right? Obviously with MMA, we don't get, if we think about where MMA would be, down-level servers, if we're not talking about the unified client, just simply MMA, there's really no blocking capabilities. It's there for its telemetry, trying to help us paint the picture and give us eyes on the environment. So of course, I think if we communicate that properly to the customer during the engagement, this is why we're doing this. This is what we're going to get from it. I definitely think that there's value, providing that they understand the perpetual use of that information. That'd probably be how I would answer that question.
I know we're going into SOP, security operation procedures and stuff like that, and we sort of pivot away from the book, but I want to fall back into the book really quick. Mm-hmm. On the how you wrote it, is your book a good reference? I mean, if someone, because I'm old school, I've been doing this probably, I don't know how old you guys are. I'm older than you, Frank, right? Yeah, sure. To date myself, Novell CNE 3.12, 4.0, HP OpenView.
Yeah,
Brocade.
my dad, bro.
Yeah, I know, right? Cisco when it wasn't Cisco yet. I have the history of that, right? So I've broken a lot of stuff, but I'm still a paper guy. I still got books over there, my old stuff, and I love to go to my book and I highlight and I fold a page. Is this a good reference? Is your published document either where it's hard copy or the PDF or whatever the youngsters are doing these days with books? Is it still a good reference? Really quick.
In terms of a standard operating procedure, I don't think that.
Oh, let me go back.
Okay.
I sort of said that. That's not what I meant. Not as a way to understand how you should do certain things, but if I'm looking for something like I mean, what does MDE do again? When is it that really good that, I can go look at this really quickly and do it? Because my biggest fault that I have with all the stuff that's online is there's so much stuff online. Oh my God, you'll go down a rabbit hole trying to find a simple answer to something that when I went to a book over here, I went through the table of contents and I found it on page 228, and I was done. So that's the context, Joe. So is your book a good reference in regards to quickly being able to find an answer to something or where to go look for it?
That's a fantastic question. Trevor, are they putting the table of contents in there? That's a
good news. We are. Yeah.
Okay.
I just haven't seen the draft of it, but who needs to see that? I'm going to approve it.
It's hilarious that I don't have the answer to that. I would assume, most books would have a table of contents. They very much separate out. Well, I guess, Frank. All right. Yeah. You've written books. Have you written with Pact? I'm not sure what publishers use.
All right.
Okay. So it's like, do the technical stuff and let us handle the publishing, the preface, all the booky stuff. And, sometimes they send us emails, especially now that they're trying to get it out the door of all of these things that it's like, I'm not an editor. I have no idea what you're telling me to do. So I feel like I should know the answer to that. I would hope that they put a wonderful reference or in the back of that thing.
I got you, Joe. The answer is yes.
Okay.
So, because it's a book, it's going to have a table of contents.
There we go.
I think that you can read this, shelf it. Let's say you learn a bunch of other stuff. You're having a long night, one red cup too many. Can you go back to your shelf, pick that book up, and refresh your memory on what MDE is? Absolutely. Same thing with every tool that's supported under the Microsoft 365 Defender stack, right? As long, caveat, as long as Microsoft, don't just radically change what MDE or MDI are, or MDO 365, or what Sentinel is, or Defender for Cloud, or Defender for Cloud Apps is. Yes, I would say it would definitely be something you can revert back to 6 months down the road. While yes, features might change, they're going to change. We might change the name again for all we know, but the concepts will be there to kind of light your head back up and get you back down that track again.
So you mentioned something about things change. What's the term I'm looking for with your book? Errata, where you have to do these updates. Are you guys involved in that when these things come out, that you have a certain amount of time that you must update the book in its current format before you dish the book, and then you have to rewrite it because things have changed so much? How do you guys introduce updates? Because Frank is killing Frank. Name changes and all this other stuff. He's like, oh.
Joe, remember it happened midway through writing when Ignite did the rebrand. And we're like, oh man. So we went back to the publishers, right? Hey, FYI, we're gonna have to do a find and replace in every chapter we've already submitted. And by the way, there's new announcements that we can't tell you because we can't announce it, right? Because I don't think they're under NDA. That we just know are coming. So we're going to proactively write with those in mind, just so you know. Trust us. And even last night, man, we got an email at 2:00 in the morning saying, hey, we found where products have been changed. I said, what? And they said, do you accept these changes? I said, of course I accept these changes. And then they're also talking about screenshots too. Remember that? I'm like, oh my goodness.
I think the answer for sure depends on where you are in writing and where you are in the book being released. Or I'm sorry, where you are in writing and where you are in comparative to when things change. Because we had finished writing in November, but maybe right before November. I forget when we wrapped up, end of October, early November. And it was right at that time, I think late October, that the Unified Agent came out for MDE. And it was like, do I go back and rewrite this entire chapter, or do I caveat it that this is, this will be in preview and just go with what's GA at this point? And we opted to go with what was GA because I just knew that the unified client, and it turned out to be true, was going to change a ton in the first couple of months as it evolved and matured. So, things like that, are frustrating. But at this point where we are with writing, that we really can't go back and rewrite chapters. I think with an exam book, you just kind of got to get it out there. Otherwise, you're going to be in a perpetual state of, well, this changed. Well, I know this change is coming, so let's just wait a couple of weeks, and then you're never going to release the book. It's tough.
Yeah, funny story is that I actually don't want to know the roadmap to Sentinel or MDE or any of that stuff. I don't want to know it, right? Because when I have to write content, it has to be what's going on today.
Yep.
When I wrote the Learn material for SC-200, I knew the unified portal was coming out. 1 week after that stuff was published on Learn, the unified portal came out. It's like, how do they know? How do they know? Right?
Yeah.
And that has been, and we knew it was coming out, but there's nothing we could do. And also, until the lab environments actually see it, you really can't even have it in the material anyways. So like I learned that even though I had it in my production environment, 1 week after that content was shipped out, it was not actually in the labs that come with SC-200 in their spin up labs that they do until summer. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to know what the future of anything is. It's like, what is it? What is it today? And it's a painful thing. I mean, and the other thing is is it still called Microsoft Defender for IoT? Look that one up. What changes they've made and did not announce in there. So that's another pain.
There's all type of stuff coming, man. I can't keep up. But let me ask this quick question as we round out a couple things, and then Frank, you can close
I got
us
one
out
final
really quick.
question. Yeah.
One final question. Whether it be technical, business, personal, tell me one thing that each one of you learned by doing this evolution, right? Because not everybody gets to be published. It's a daunting endeavor, right? Because you inherently say that I am an SME. Read my stuff. You need to know what I know. What's something that you learned, in doing this endeavor?
For me, it really kind of gave me some sort of empathy, if you will, on people that have to read the public docs in sort of the structure that they're in. Because when you're writing a book, I mean, obviously, you have to align the exam topics with what's publicly available for the people to read, right? We can't write on NDA stuff or things that aren't in documentation. But it gave me some empathy on the battle, and I know about it anyways because if I were to share my screen, there's 2 instances of Edge and 80 tabs open of various docs. So I'm used to it, but until I wrote the book, I was like, wow, because you're trying to structure things when you write this book. You're trying to write a chronological path that somebody should go down when they're researching a particular topic. And I was like, we've got some work to do with our docs and in structuring them and keeping them up to date. Between the book and just general IR stuff that I do, I lost track of how many requests to get docs changed, because you have to look into the details, because you're guiding people towards, if you're going to go deeper, here's the URL for that doc page. I suggest you go deeper in this, but you can't just guide somebody towards something that has some inaccuracies in it. So I found myself reading a lot more docs than I needed to, and definitely picked up some empathy on what people go through that aren't privy to some of the stuff that we get to see internally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Trevor?
Yeah, I would say I definitely picked up some new technical elements around some of the components from a workload protection standpoint that up until writing it, majority of my customers in my 4.5 years at Microsoft, I just didn't touch. So one would be Defender for Cloud for DNS, and then for ARM. I don't really have any customers that use either of those workload protections, but so I did get to learn about that, which is cool. So you pick it up. I mean, it makes sense by the title of what it does, but learning a little bit more under the hood, how it works and why it's valuable to the customer, and why there's really nothing out there that does something, at least for ARM, that I'm aware of, was great. And then personally, just process wise, it takes a lot. It really does take a lot. I think it's far more difficult to write a book when you have a full-time job. I think we could have knocked this book out in half the time if we were legally allowed to, set an hour or 2 a day or 2 hours a day during the workday to get stuff done. Because once you close down shop at 5, 6, 7, whatever your day allows you to, you're done. You're like, oh, nope, got a deadline. Got to go knock out this chapter. You're like, man, where's my beer at, right? And so it was getting past that. And I got to give my boy Joe some credit, because he's like the older brother I never had. And so he had to whip me into shape a couple times and said, dude, get on Teams, get yourself a White Claw, let's just knock out this, the questions. We have a mock test at the end of at the last chapter of the book. And so learned a lot there. And then I think also just like how like the structure of like the authoring contract is all done. Very interesting. So read the fine print, understand what an advance is from a royalty deduction perspective and avenues of where, potential income can be made from as you publish. And then just be patient. You have to be patient because it's not just authoring it and sending them for final review. There's 7 to 10 other steps that have to happen, seemingly in no real order, in order to get things shipped out and onto the shelves. And good news, this is not just going to be paperback. It'll be on digital platforms as well, like Kindle. So if you're an e-reader fan, you can get it on there. And I think Joe and I are both working on second books. He's working on something different than I am. But I believe we've learned from our mistakes, and we're picking a book that's going to have less change during the authoring. So I'm writing one on defending and hardening Microsoft directories. So that's going to be Azure Active Directory and on-prem Active Directory. And Joe's doing something for what are you doing again, Joe?
So the Defender for Endpoint umbrella. So I have the feature PM for the unified stack. I have a developer on the ASR team and somebody from CDOC, which is our internal SOC. Contributing to this book. So we're going to go as deep as we can on the umbrella that is Defender for Endpoint. Because there hasn't been a Microsoft book by any publisher since SCEP, which has been a while. So yeah, so we're gonna take that as deep as we can legally.
Very cool. I like I said, I'm going to get the book. I'm a fan of I'm tactical, right? I like this.
You gonna now let me ask my 2 questions?
Oh, well, go ahead, Frank. I'm sorry. Excuse my manners.
Two questions. Out of the 4 products, right? Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, MCAS I still call it, and Office 365. Which product would be the last one that you would recommend a customer to implement?
I'm biased here.
And this is going to be published?
Yeah.
You want to go first, Joe?
Oh man. If I say what I would do first, that's up to the reader to interpret what I would pitch last. I gotta go just based off bias. I focus on, I'm very, very entrenched in the endpoint stack. So I would say one of the Defender for Cloud, which is probably not going to resonate well with some.
No, I mean, you got Defender for Cloud apps.
Yeah.
Defender for Office 365. I think the M365 Defender for products. So which one would you say customer do this one last? It doesn't provide as much value.
Oh my God, that's I'm not sure.
Big shout out to all the product group leads that listen to the podcast.
All right, Trevor. Go ahead, Trevor.
I plead the fifth.
Wait, is plead the fifth an option?
No, not for you.
No. Oh, not for me? That's funny. All right, fine, I'll crucify myself. But this is as much as I appreciate where it lies on the attack kill chain, 100%, I see it. I just know there's stuff out there that does it a little bit better. I would have to do Defender for Office 365.
Wow.
That might have been my pick.
So now I got a real question for you is, what are the 2 features in the M365 Defender suite that you see clients not implementing, but they should be and will provide great value to them? And what page is it on your book?
ASR and Defender AV. Defender AV, if we think historically, has not been one of the top players for a while, up until pick your time frame on when you think that curve went basically straight up. I would say the Defender AV, and then understanding the difference in delta in features between it being in passive and active. But ASR, I never ever see ASR enabled. I've seen one in a
ASR as an ASR rule.
I'm sorry, attack surface reduction rules. Yeah, because there's a few things that fall under the ASR umbrella. ASR rules. And that's funny because I'm actually very critical when people say that. It's like, especially when they say MDE when they're referring to the EDR, but ASR rules. In fact, the only advisory in the last 50 that I've taken, one had them enabled, and they actually had them all enabled in block mode, which I was like, wow, you guys threw the kitchen sink at your environment, and kudos. They were very, very in tune with our stack, and it was very awesome to see. I mean, the amount of easy things, easy wins that attack surface reduction rules would have prevented in a lot of like the ransomware engagements that I've done. Yeah, number one, ASR, and then two would be properly configuring MDAV.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
I have perspective on why that is, but I'll let Trevor go first.
So yeah, the question was, what do we not see customers implement out of the Microsoft 365 Defender stack, but they should?
Mm-hmm.
Features or
top
products?
Features, top two.
Features, for me, tamper protection, which is interesting. Don't know why. It makes sense. One of the first things the bad guy's going to do is go figure out how to turn your stuff off. So go deploy it, please. It's literally a radio button. All right, just turn it on.
What does it do to educate everyone out here?
Oh yeah, tamper protection. So basically, there's many ways where a bad actor or even somebody like you and me could go try to turn off security features on devices to remain hidden, right? Or just because they're an annoyance and they're slowing down your machine at times. And so tamper protection disallows those changes from happening. And you can only turn it on and turn it off from one location. So it's not like you turn it on and you have your SEC and your Intune people turning it off. It has to come from one place and then off from that same place, which is cool. And then I would probably second, I would say from a solution standpoint, people don't actually turn on MDI, but I mean, that's not a feature. That's just part of it. You go to a customer, they have everything under the sun on, but they're not doing it on their DCs because they forget they need to do that. I'm like, you don't even have the secret sauce deployed to kind of make everything make more sense to you here. But they're like, oh, what is it? Oh, it's just, I'm like, okay. But I would say ASR. So I would second what Joe said would be, so tamper protection and then ASR.
Yeah. Tamper protection, if I were to have gotten more granular, would have probably made the list, but I was trying to think more of a group of things. Tamper protection is almost never enabled. That's something we flip on right away in an engagement. Definitely an important one, but yeah. I just was thinking ASR rules from the instance of, how it would have stopped something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm amazed by, Edward can tell you how much I've pushed ASR rules specifically, and when he's talking to customers about it. So glad to hear I'm not the only one.
Well, I think that the adoption of ASR is because there's a little bit of confusion, and whenever I think I know something, I'm quickly found out that I don't. Okay, so here's the reason that I say I've had some customers who have absolutely done what you said, Joe. It's locked down. Yeah. Nobody's trusted. Nothing can be assumed. But the problem is that you said something about your skill set that either the customer they don't have it, or if they do have it, it's separate from the security team. Oftentimes, the SCCM and the Intune person and the SCOM person is not the security person. Mm-hmm. So they're confused. Where do I enable ACR? Do I go into MIM/Intune, Microsoft Endpoint Management, formerly known as Intune, or do I put ASR in MDE? So the customer doesn't know. And the ops people think that the security people are doing it, security people think that the ops people are doing it.
Yeah.
So we did talk about that SC-200, but you should be looking at the security baselines that are published with inside Intune.
Yeah.
Yes.
Modifying them. So my next question is, now since they're going to stop. So primarily I look at ASR rules as really kind of focused around the attacks of Excel and Word documents coming in. Primarily, I know it's not exclusive to that. Now with the changes of not allowed to be able to run those macros coming from internet-based or email-based documents, how much does ASR matter now? Because they're already blocking it out of the box, basically.
Well, there's plenty of rules that still, that still have an incredible amount of value. One that comes to mind, I think, is the LSAS rule, which I just saw that I believe that's default on now. I'm not sure of the details of when that started, but I saw somebody, a few people that I follow on Twitter mentioning that we have a note in our documentation now that says that rule is default on in block mode. which is interesting. So, yeah, I mean, there's still plenty of rules that provide a ton of value, especially the WMI and PS exec one, which is also another interesting rule with, with configuration manager managed environments. It's not something you can flip on if you're a configuration manager, because you'll basically break the CCM agent. So there's a lot of, I think the difficulty with ASR is there's so many considerations for the different rules, and especially the bigger the company you go, like most ASR rules, some of the office related ones, you'll break accounting departments with the amount of macros that they have. I think that's the difficulty behind ASR is the considerations for each one, and then managing, depending on what license you have, how do you view the alerts and the events from it. There's a lot that goes into it. Like ASR rules themselves are, it's a good chunk of stuff to manage. But I would say, regardless of that rule or that change, there's still incredible amounts of value across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
All right, that's all my questions, Edward.
Hey, it wasn't that, man. You were in a bad day. Hey, so as we
that
close
bad
this
today.
out, we'll allow Joe and Trevor to have any parting words. But one thing I would ask before you guys leave the show is to give your full name, title of the book, the projected release date outside of pre-release. If it's still pre-order, don't worry about it. And where the book can be published from. So this time we'll go backwards. Trevor, give our listeners everything about you and that, and then you can do the same thing, Joe.
Sure. Yeah. Trevor Stuart, Senior Cloud Solution Architect at Microsoft. And our book is going to be the best book out there. It's going to be the greatest SC-200 exam ref book you're going to find out in the market. The full title is Microsoft Security Operations Analyst, Exam Reference SC-200 Certification Guide. It's a mouthful, but guess what? I have a subtitle for you too. Learn how to mitigate threats using the Microsoft Security Stack and achieve your SC-200 certification. So this will be released on Amazon. It'll also be on online. You can have paperback. You can do Kindle. It's also available on the Pact Publishing website. It's going to be available on Google as well. And we're expecting it to be shipping in the next 45 to 60 days. They are going to be fast tracking it just because of everything that's going on with this particular test and the technologies around it.
Joe, same thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously all of the same book stuff. I can't plug it any better than that. But yeah, Joe Anich, Senior CE Incident Response at Microsoft. I guess some closing words about the book would be, regardless of the exam itself, or I should say independent of the exam, if we put that aside, there's a lot to pull from the book. I think there's a lot of value to pull from the book, regardless of the exam as the focal point. If you're operational in the Microsoft security stack, I think it's a great resource to pick up, genuinely.
Very cool. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and coming on and talking about this. Skilling up and learning and knowledge sharing is one of our passions, especially Franklin. He's all about helping everybody get better, learn. Hence, he convinced me to do the podcast, and our listenership has grown. We will capture any relevant brand presence. I hate the term social media, but we'll capture any brand presence information so we can promote you guys on LinkedIn and everything else.
Cool.
We definitely want to welcome you back to the show anytime that you want to come back on. I know, Joe, I want you to come back on and talk MDI with us a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I didn't know you was an SCCM guy also. And then Trevor, anytime you want to come on and say, hey, I got something to say, all you do is let us know.
Let's do Defender for Cloud next, man.
Defender for Cloud, then. I'm all
Sure.
about that. And then if you guys want to co-host, we always love, guest co-hosts to come on. That way Franklin and I can take some vacation.
Let's do it, Joe. Let's stick together, man.
We you two can run it. We've had.
There's my first no.
We are having a Defender for Office person on in the next few weeks or so. So you can host that show.
Don't show them the end of this podcast.
Yep, we do have it. I won't mention her name, but she's coming on. Angela Marafino.
There you go. I'll have to apologize in advance. Sorry.
She's great.
Yeah.
And then one of your peers was supposed to come on, maybe not your peer so much, but you know of him, Joe, Ricky Simpson.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just super busy right now. He got a lot of stuff running around. So, but
Yeah.
we're gonna have a two-parter. Maybe you two will be on at the same time. We don't know.
Yeah.
And we did get a request from Matt Egan to come back onto the
Yes,
show
he's a
because
rock star.
he said he had something to say, and he's leading a very important endeavor at Microsoft on some stuff that he done sort of as a passion project that is sort of taking off.
Awesome. Yeah, on the MDI stuff, my colleague was former MDI CSS. He's an all-star. He'd be a good person to bring on that week too. Go full MDI. Chris Smith. He was CSS for the MDI product. Mm-hmm. He's an absolute rock star.
So you guys figured out. We'll find some dates. We're sort of booked through March, but we're going to get you back on. So we get, independents, partners, Microsoft employees. We try to get a nice swash so everybody just not drinking the same Kool-Aid. We have yet to. This is a Microsoft security show, so we're not bringing on, and it's our show. We can do what we want. We're not bringing on anybody else's product. So if you're out there and you want to, hey, I'm with Carbon Black, I want to come on the show. Not this show. And there's some other shows out there for you, but this ain't the one. Thank you guys so much. I'm excited to see that the learning out there to help, because I think that everybody knows the value of the product, the entire security stack that is embedded into E5, but it can be overwhelming where to start. You do not know it. It's just so much. So that's the reason Frank asked the question. We generally ask it in a different manner. What is the first thing that you would deploy rather than the last, right? But in the end, you still deploy. And I definitely want to ask. Yeah, I want to get Trevor back on to talk about Defender for Cloud, because I am getting pulled into it, and that's not really my strong point. And because it's so broad. So when we talk about it, we will want to keep it very specific to installing of the agent via extensions in the cloud, and maybe a little bit of the hybrid capability by connecting to others. But to try to go down Defender for IoT, Defender for this, we'd be all day, right? Doing all this stuff. But cloud is the thing, because customers want to know, do I use this? Do I use this? Do I use both? And then once they decide both, then the licensing throws everything off. Like, okay, if I got this, and I got this, and then if I do this, and so I get confused sometimes. But well, everyone, with that, thanks so much. This is the Microsoft Security Insights podcast, recorded on February 9th, 2022. And thanks to our guests, Trevor and Joe, and be on the lookout for their book, the study guide for SC-200. We'll put all the stuff in the show notes. That'll be out next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.